she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easy.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host. And I am so thrilled about this program because I'm going to be interviewing two interns from Project Censored. I don't know if many of you know, but Project Censored is a special program that takes place at Sonoma State University. But before we begin the program, I'm doing something just a little bit different because this program I am dedicating to Yoko Ono and John Lennon. I don't know if my viewers are aware of this, but Yoko Ono actually erected a imagined peace tower in Iceland. And here's a picture of the peace tower, and I want to read something from Yoko from the speech that she read when at the ceremony to open up the light. The light is the light of wisdom, healing, and empowerment. Even in the moments of confusion, fear, and the darkness of your souls, hold the light in your hearts, and you will know that you are not alone, that we are together in seeing the light of peace. I mean, that to me is so beautiful. And what's so interesting about it is very little coverage was given through the mainstream media. In fact, how I heard about this was through watching Amy Goodman in her show Democracy Now! And it's just amazing to me that there's so little coverage given on this beautiful, beautiful monument. I mean, it's a monument to John Lennon and his song, which most of us are very familiar with, which is Imagine. And the other thing that I wanted to make a comment on before we start is that I really have to scratch my head over this one. Congress was trying to pass a health care bill for disadvantaged young people. They were requesting $35 billion to be spent over a 5-year period. And it was vetoed by the president, and they could not get enough votes to override the veto. In fact, from what I understand, not one Republican voted on that particular issue. And what I'm scratching my head about is the fact that we can take $120 billion at a snap of the finger and put it towards our military. And we can't have health care for our young people. We should be hanging our head in shame. I mean, this is just not acceptable. And I'd like people to think about it. Write your people, write your leaders. Tell them, listen, we want health care for our children. We want decisions made with the idea in mind and the question in mind, is this good for the children? Well, that's enough of my commentaries. You know, we only have 27 minutes here. So without further ado, I want to introduce Linda Moore and Margo Tyack. They are Sonoma State Project Censored interns. Welcome. Welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. Good to be here.
Well, you know, we've had some time getting this whole show up and, you know, the show set up, and it's just an honor to have you here, you know.
Thank you.
And the way I start the program is I try to get my my guests to just give us a little information about yourself, whatever you feel is important. Let's start with you, Linda.
As mentioned, my name is Linda Moore. I am a senior at Sonoma State University. This is my last academic semester. I'll be graduating December 2007. I am a mother of 9 children. They're all my biological children between my former spouse and I. And I'm a newly grandma. Her name is Anaya Lynn. She's 3 months old, and that's rather exciting for me. And I enjoy my major at Sonoma State is Communication Studies, and there's a lot to be learned there.
And how about you, Margo?
Well, I am also a senior at Sonoma State, and this is my second semester working with Project Censored. And we are both doing the PR work through the internship. I am majoring in liberal studies and Spanish, which has been actually fairly helpful. We have some events coming up where I can use my Spanish in the future. So it's been great, and I will be graduating in May. So.
Well, welcome, ladies. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
Women's Spaces. Now, I know, Sonoma State is my alumni. I graduated in 1975 in the sociology department. So I'm very familiar with Project Censored, and actually, Carl Jensen, when I came to Sonoma State, it was also his first semester at Sonoma State, and it was just thrilling to have him as a teacher with some of his ideas and some of the, he's just really a free thinker. And also the fact that he was the one that started Project Censored, and now Peter Phillips has taken over. So I really think it's an honor to have you here, and we're going to talk about Project Censored, and we're going to talk about how you got involved. So the first question I'd like to ask both of you is, and just kind of take turns answering, I'll kind of give you a little back and forth with the finger, is, to kind of guide you. Now I'm not going to give you the finger, I'm just going to guide you, is how did you hear about Project Censored?
Actually, it came to me by Sandra Shan. She's an advisor at the university. I was in her office one afternoon and I saw a book in her library, and I asked her about it, and she began to tell me what the project was all about. And it struck my interest, so I took it from that point and I went over to the Project Censored office and asked more about it, and from that point on I became captivated with their agenda and how they bring up news that's in the media that really doesn't get the truthful and the rightful coverage.
And how about you, Margo?
Well, my mom actually had a Project Censored book about 5 years ago, and I was just interested in the topic. I thought it sounded phenomenal to be informed about this media that wasn't getting covered, this information that wasn't getting covered in mainstream media. And I'm from Lodi, California, and actually that's Peter's hometown, so I know his family, and I just made sure that I was able to check out Project Censored when I arrived at Sonoma State.
From what I understand, that I think this is right now, Project Censored looks like it's about, 25 years? 25 years old, is that true?
About 30.
About 32, I believe. We had our 30-year anniversary a couple years ago.
Right.
So this is actually the 30th edition.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show my audience a picture of the book. Here it is, Project Censored. I'm going to get a little bit better view here. And this says 2008. I think the cover is really, really very interesting. You want to explain that cover a little bit? Give our audience a little feeling of how that actually came about.
Well, actually, I'll say a little bit about what I understand from it. From my perspective, when I first saw the cover, the first thing that got my attention was the blood of tears coming out of Lady Liberty's eyes. That was really compelling and drawing to me, and the side of the face being burned. And basically that was an indication that's what's happening to our American democracy. By, things that are happening, things that are being covered up, things that, the media just don't want us to know.
Well, that's what's so important about this project, because it's telling the story of what the media does not want us to know, and I think it's very challenging, Can either one of you address what some of the major challenges were just working around the book, or some of the inside stories you hear about the book itself?
So are you referring to, difficulties with putting the book together?
Right, whatever you think is important.
Oh, well, the process of finding the stories is fairly complicated, but there are a number of interns that work together to collect the information from various sources, and it's a full year project, because there's the constant search for new stories, and then you've got to keep tabs on the stories that you've accumulated in order to determine whether or not they've gotten enough coverage. The stories that are in our book are the ones that we've deemed haven't had enough coverage by any means. So.
And I know each one of you works on a specific story. Linda, what story did you work on?
In the Project Censored 2008 book is story number 9 by Jerome Corsi, and it's basically talking about the privatization of American infrastructure. And if I can be allowed just to briefly talk a little bit about it to everyone, where they have some may not know. Basically, American highways are up for sale, and they're being sold to foreign companies for billions of dollars. These are highways that American taxpayers have paid to have them built and to have them maintained. This has been, there's approximately about 20 states that have sold and in the process selling part of their infrastructure to foreign countries with the help of investment firms going to Washington and assisting them how to convince them to be in support of this endeavor.
Now, wait a minute, Linda. You're saying that through this book, through working on the stories, that your particular story found out that we're selling our highways?
Exactly.
How does that work? I mean, in other words, another country can own our highways?
Yes, and the thing about it, the governor is the one that's really pushing it, the governor of these states. It has happened in Texas, it has happened in many other states as well as Chicago, Pennsylvania, Virginia. California at one time sold a part of Orange County, but at one point they wanted to make some changes in it, and who they sold it to, an Australian company, wouldn't allow them to make the changes because sometimes they have this non-compete clause in there that would not allow them to do so. So the only way out of it is they bought it back from them. So therefore, in buying it back from who they sold it to, the foreign company made a huge profit.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just sitting here just scratching my head saying, what are they doing? I mean, I know there's a big push towards privatizing things, but privatizing our highways, that's really, really interesting. You know, in working on that story, how did that change your view about things? I mean, did it give you more information? Were you surprised by it? What happened?
I wasn't surprised because I know there's a lot of underhanded things that are going on. But it just made me say, wow. But the biggest concern is the American people, the taxpayers that put their money into, for the toll roads and the bridges, and they're being sold right underneath them without any type of moratorium. It's just something that they just do to make money, and it seems like it's perfectly legal.
I don't know, I got to scratch my head. I mean, all of a sudden I have this feeling of overwhelm,
Exactly.
But did it change your life? Did it change your opinion?
It really has, because I'm looking as a mother of the number of children that I have, I'm wondering about their future. My granddaughter, I'm wondering about her future. It's getting to the point I'm wondering, is United States of America going to be sold off to foreign investors? I mean, from sea to shiny sea. What are we going to have? Are our schools going to be sold off? I mean, do we know if they're really working on that? No, we don't know. All we have to do, just give it some time and we will know. So it really has changed a lot of ways in which I used to think about, our government. It really has.
That's amazing, and you made some good points that we don't know. And it's interesting, you think, since we're paying tax dollars, it's supposed to be our country, you think that at least they would have a vote. Well, Linda, thank you for shocking me. And I'm sure our audience is just thinking, what? And what they can do is, I'm going to hold up the book. Here's the book, and what you can do is, if you want to read any more of these interesting stories, it's right here in Project Censored 2008.
Yes.
Well, Margo, let's turn to you. Which story did you work on?
I worked on the first story, which is called No Habeas Corpus for Any Person, which basically is just that. The Military Commissions Act was passed in October of 2006, and basically what it does is it allows for the imprisonment of enemy combatants, which are deemed according to the Military Commissions Act, and they can even be U.S. citizens. The phrasing in the Military Commissions Act is so vague. You can't really tell whether they're referring to foreigners or if they're referring to U.S. citizens. And so, with that convenient, vague phrasing, it is very much aimed at U.S. citizens as well. And it allows for measures such as imprisonment, torture, just appalling things. And it was passed in 2006. So we we could see some very clear issues that are going on currently in the near future.
You know, in reading this, in working on this story, you know, what happened to you? Any changes, any deeper insights that you got into around the news or what's happening even in the culture that really kind of was a red flag for you?
Well, definitely. I think that a lot of people feel as if they're not as informed as they could be. Working with Project Censored, I know that I'm getting stories that just haven't been heard at all, and I feel more informed for that reason, but these are just our top 25. There are hundreds and hundreds of stories that are covered by students. Interns come across these stories over the course of the year, and they end up voting on the 25 that they think have the biggest impact on American citizens. Oh, and international citizens too. We've got just appalling stories. But anyway, it's great to be informed, and yet I think because it's so difficult to get this information, we search databases that are only accessible to us through the university. And it's just, it's very difficult to get the information, and I think that a lot of the news coverage that people are encountering gets so clouded, so manipulated. And for that reason, I think a lot of people hear about stories like these and they're appalled and stunned. They don't know what to do, which I have to admit is kind of how I feel. It's kind of debilitating to some extent. You wonder what can I do? What kind of action can I take?
So it sounds to me like through this process and through you becoming involved, you really became aware of how little information we're actually getting. You know, I was thinking about the story that you covered about no habeas corpus to anybody, and the idea of supporting torture and some of the things that are going on in our culture. I just had the privilege of watching 14 and a half hours of The War by Ken Burns, and there was one little clip in there where they had cleaned out the concentration camps, and it was just horrendous. I mean, the horrors that those people did. And yet at the same time, one of the soldiers was on the film, and he said he felt like doing all these different things to these German officers who had done these horrendous things in the concentration camp. He says, but yet we were bound by the Geneva Conference. We were bound by habeas corpus, so that these people had a right to a trial and they had a right to be heard, even though they were doing these horrendous things. And so here we are in 2007, and suddenly a thing as precious as habeas corpus is being threatened. It's just mind-boggling to me. You know, but you brought up another interesting point, you know, after on my little soapbox here, but just an interesting point that there are so many stories. Do either one of you have any idea of how these stories are chosen?
Yes. Would you like to?
You can start. Finish.
Well, we have a number of people, different figures in society. We've had, various other authors. In fact, we've got a list in the beginning of the book there. I think they go through 30 authors.
Yeah, and you have evaluators, you have professors at the university, you have people within the community, and they all, because these stories you have them evaluated more than one time, and then they're finally funneled down to the 25, and then they have that selection once it's going to be put in the book. So they're just not, the story's just not, okay, these 25, it goes through a process, and it ends up where it is the 25 top.
You know, I'm really curious. Now you're talking about 25, and I'm thinking to myself, well, is there any way that people can read the other stories besides the book? I mean, is there any archives or anything on the other stories that have been chosen?
Yes, you contact Project Censored at Sonoma State University. We have all that information that we're more than happy to share with the community.
Well, just give us a little overview before we end the show. Is that how did it change your life?
I became even more curious. After all, communication studies is my major, so I'm media-based, and that was the start of it, but Project Censored really kept the light on, if I could say it that way, and I questioned a lot of things. I question the answer, I question the question, and I'm wondering, why isn't this particular story being shown in the mainstream media, unlike the junk type stories? Britney Spears, okay, she shaved her hair for whatever reason. Angelina Jolie, okay, it's nice to adopt a baby. That's really noble of her. That's a wonderful thing. Paris Hilton, that's junk journalism. If they give airtime for something of that caliber, and it's not a big thing, what about all these other issues that are in all of these Project Censored books? And like Margo said, there are so many stories, but the media just don't talk about them. And I just came to the conclusion it's just not part of the media's agenda setting.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you say that, because I just wrote a letter to an executive, I won't mention the name, and I said that I feel that some of these producers, don't they have children? I mean, aren't they concerned about the future? Don't they see what they're doing? I mean, is money more important than our children's health, or really understanding about the war, or understanding some of the things that are going on? I mean, it's an amazing experience for me when I start thinking about it. And when I've read Project Censored, when I read the Censored 208 book, I'm going, oh my goodness, I never heard of this, or I never heard of that. You know, how about you, Margo? What are some of the things that how has it changed you? What is going on in your mind after working on this project?
Well, I've been going through a very similar process. It's very difficult for me now to watch TV and just absorb. I haven't been able to do it for years.
Right.
I can't just take what's handed me anymore, because I'm really questioning where it's coming from. And what's appalling to me is that a lot of people aren't doing the same. Of, you know, people my age, it's very easy to get kind of hooked into popular culture, popular media, and just listen to little excerpts you hear on the radio, or hear little excerpts you hear on TV, and okay, well, that's it. And you get kind of a general idea. And that's another huge issue. There's a bit of apathy, and I think partly it is a disconnection. We are so privileged in the U.S. to not have to deal with people on our soil fighting against us. You know, we go to other countries, and so we don't have to deal with people coming in and using our resources the same way we go to other countries and use their resources. We're very privileged, and it can't last. It can't last like that, and we need to take responsibility for ourselves, because, like you said, as far as the future goes, there's no way that this is a very unsustainable livelihood that we've kind of established for ourselves. So we need to start taking responsibility, and I think that working with Project Censored has really helped me realize just how getting informed is a very, very solid start. You've got to become informed, and then you can take action.
Well, you know, you hit the nail on the head, and and I think what happens too is exactly what Linda said, is the reason that there's so much apathy, because people are more hung up on Paris Hilton and you know, like you said, Angelina Jolie, or, you know, Britney Spears shaving her head, rather than looking at the real issues in the world. Well, you know, ladies, time goes by very, very quickly in this station, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming to Women's Spaces. And if either one of you want to just look at the camera and take about 30 seconds, I mean, if you go ahead, Margo, if you want to give a message to the youth, if you, Linda, want to say something for the grandmothers or the mothers out there, whatever, take about 15, 20 seconds apiece. Why don't you start, Linda?
I would like to say, as a mother of a few children, and as a grandmother, it's up to us to try to make any type of changes that we can make for our children, for their children. Because the corporations and the companies that are making these changes for us, doing things like I mentioned in my story, soon they're going to be pushing up daisies. And they're going to have all this stuff left behind for our children to try to unravel. But while we're still here, there's a role that we must play for our children and our grandchildren. And I think by me doing something like I'm doing today, on air, talking about the issue, that's another start as far as what I'm doing for my family and my neighbors' families as well.
Oh, and how about you? Real quick, Margo.
I think certainly the same thing. I think that it is so possible to become informed and people of all ages just need to take the initiative to do that. And it's very, very fulfilling, very satisfying, and from there you can take action.
Well, Linda and Margo, thank you so much for being on Women's Spaces.
Thank you.
And to my listening audience, as I always say at the end of each program, just imagine. I mean, just listen to these young women and listen to Project Censored, the job that they're doing, the risks that they're taking by putting out all these stories and making sure that we're informed. And just take it one step further. Just imagine if each one of us just did that much for peace. Imagine what the world would be like. And if our world leaders, when they're making decisions, was asked one basic question: is it good for the children? Just imagine. Like John Lennon said, imagine. This is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying goodbye until the next time.